Right, thank you for inviting us, everybody. My name's Iskander and I'm from Gaelic.
I'm Dave from Gaelic.
I'm Jenna. I'll give you 3 guesses where I'm from.
I'm Amber and I'm an Asian Muslim transgender from Gaelic.
I'm Sarah from Gaelic.
And I'm Nick from Gaelic.
The presentation will be about Anne Lister's diaries, the Rosetta Stone of 19th century lesbianism.
When John Lister, that gentleman up there, the last in the line of the Lister family from Halifax, decided not to burn the coded diary of his ancestor Anne Lister, and instead to hide them behind the panelling in Shibden Hall, he knew exactly what he was doing. John, who was an antiquarian and himself gay, realised how important the diaries were. As the hieroglyphics of the Rosetta Stone opened up the lives of ancient Egyptians, Anne Lister's coded diaries open up the hitherto hidden lives of early 19th century lesbianism.
About 1/6 of the 4 million words written in her diaries are coded. These relate to her personal life and intimate affairs, including her systematic seduction of several women, and reflected on her butchness.
Yet my manners are certainly peculiar, not all masculine, but rather softly gentlemanlike. I know how to please girls.
And used specific terms to describe lesbian sex. For example, grobbling meant having sex, while kiss was used to mean orgasm. The word lesbianism didn't exist, so she invented the phrase connection with the ladies. Whilst full sexual connection involving full commitment was going to Italy. She went there several times.
On John Lister's death in 1933, Shibden Hall, the ancestral home of the Listers was given to the borough of Halifax and has been open to the public for many years. But when the diaries were found, borough officials forbade anyone writing about the sexual aspects of them until, that is, Helena Whitbread came along in the 1980s. Helena's first book, I Know My Own Heart, The Diaries of Anne Lister, published in 1988, let the cat out of the bag. Until then it was believed that lesbianism as such did not exist, and that middle-class women had passionate friendships with other women, which did not include sex.
But let us tell you Anne's story. At the age of 7, Anne's parents, Jeremy and Rebecca, sent her away to school in Britain. The school was run by Mrs. Chettle and a Mrs. Haig. I wonder if she's an ancestor of Bloomhaig. Anne recalls being whipped every day at Britain, possibly in an attempt to curb her tomboy ways. Another pupil described Anne in her own diary as being
A singular child and singularly dressed, but genteel looking, very quick and independent, and quite above telling any untruth. Whistled very well, a great favourite of Mrs. Chettle.
At 14, Anne went to Manor School in York. Her first lover was a young woman who shared the same bedroom at Manor School. Her name was Eliza Ray. Eliza's mother was Indian and her father an English surgeon who worked for East Indian Company. Anne later admitted in her diaries that she used to flirt with other girls, causing Eliza much distress.
Through her friendship with Eliza, Anne met Mr. and Mrs. Duffin, Eliza's guardians, and through them other more affluent families, such as the Norcliffes, who lived at Langton Hall near Malton between York and Scarborough. When Anne was 19 years old, she met Isabella Norcliffe, who was 6 years older than her. They embarked upon a serious and long-running trip to Italy. Isabella wanted to become Anne's lifelong partner, and although Anne wasn't sure that Isabella suited her, nevertheless, because of the social advantages the relationship could bring, Anne indulged Isabella's fancies.
Isabella made the big mistake of introducing Anne to Mariana Belcom, the daughter of a York doctor. Anne became passionately attracted to Mariana, and by 1814 she had ditched Isabella to become Mariana's lover. Mariana was the love of her life. Anne wore an engagement ring and a wedding ring given to her by Mariana. They went through a little ceremony of kissing these and swearing their love for one another. However, because Anne was not yet wealthy enough to live independently, Mariana was forced to marry Charles Lawton, who owned Lawton Hall and its surrounding estates in Cheshire. Anne was heartbroken.
The time, the manner of her marriage. Oh, how it broke the magic of my faith forever. How, spite of love, it burst the spell that bound my very reason.
As Mariana was now a respected figure in Cheshire society, she became ashamed of being seen in public with Anne. In 1823, Anne wrote,
Mary, you have passion like the rest, but your caution cheats the world out of its scandal. and your courage is weak, rather than your principle strong. It was a coward love that dare not brave the storm.
In order to get over Mariana, Anne moved to Paris and lived there for 2 years, having an affair with Mrs. Maria Barlow, a young widow. Anne's flirting with women is so open and gentlemanlike that several female acquaintances wonder if she's in fact a man in disguise. She is fully aware that people talk about her, and when Mrs. Barlow asks what her maidservant thinks of her behaviour, she responds,
Oh, merely that I have my own particular ways. I happen to say that my aunt often said I was the oddest person she ever knew. Mrs. Barlow said, but she knows all about it, does she not? Oh, said I. She and my friends were all missed about it.
However, the affair with Mrs. Barlow was doomed, mainly because Anne still cared about Mariana, and not surprisingly, Mrs. Barlow was jealous. After touring Switzerland and northern Italy with Mrs. Barlow, Anne realised she was not the lifelong partner she so desired, and parted company when they returned to Paris. The winter of 1827-28 was spent cultivating a friendship with another young widow called Madame de Rosny, a relationship which gave Anne access to French aristocrats, but in March 1828, Anne had to return to England as a business affair at Shipton Hall needed urgent attention. On her return, Anne visited Mariana at Lawton Hall, but discovered that she now saw Mariana in a different light. She seemed quite dull and provincial. After the sophistication of Parisian women, she had clearly let go of her feelings for Mariana and wrote in her diary,
Why? What have I to do with having such a woman?
Anne continued to look for her lifelong partner, although she now owned Shipton Hall and its estates. Anne realised she was not as wealthy as the aristocrat circles she now mixed in, and would have to find a partner who had money. In 1832, she began courting a local woman, Anne Walker, who would become rich on the debt of her parents, inheriting an estate not far from Shipton. Anne Walker moved into Shipton Hall in September 1834, but it was not meant to be a happy relationship. It seemed that Anne Walker, like many of Anne Lister's previous partners, had mental health problems. Spending long days of depression, one doctor is recorded as saying, if Miss Walker were not rich, she would not be ill.
In June 1839, Anne Lister and Anne Walker set off on a trip to Russia, Persia and Turkey. However, at the foot of the Caucasus Mountains in Georgia, Anne caught a plague-like fever and died on the 22nd of September. The Halifax Guardian reported on the 31st of October 1840 that the remains of this distinguished lady have been embalmed, and that her friend and companion, Miss Walker, is bringing home by way of Constantinople for eternity unfold. Anne was interred in the parish church of Halifax on Thursday the 6th of May 1841. Her death plaque hung in the church for 1 whole year out of respect for her.
So, Anne Lister was a lesbian, and was a lesbian, but she was also many other things. Helena Whitbread, who we thank for telling us about Anne, both through her books and in person, is currently writing a complete biography of Anne Lister. She says, quote, Anne became the first woman to be elected to the committee at the Halifax branch of the Literary and Philosophical Society because of her academic contributions to that society. She took an active interest in schools in the area and generally encouraged the spread of education. She managed her estates, dealt with the business of farming and developed coal mining on her land. Much of her working life was spent out of doors, supervising workmen and, at times, tackling some of the physical tasks herself.
Anne often went travelling in Europe. In 1830, she was the first woman to climb Mount Petido, whilst 8 years later, the top of Vignemale was the scene of a tough competition between the Prince of Moskva and Anne Lister as to who would reach the top first. It turned out that Anne won.
Finally, we'd like to leave you with our favourite quote from Anne.
I love and only love the fairer sex, and thus, beloved by them in turn, my heart revolts from any other love but theirs.
For more information about Anne Lister, visit the Gaelic website www.gaelic.org.uk and click on About, Services and then Projects. The BBC will also be broadcasting a drama and a documentary about Anne Lister in springtime, so watch out for that. Thank you.